Let's study some technical terms and requirements you need to know to start working in design. There are two main types of files you'll be creating. The biggest decision you make when starting your file creation journey is whether that will be a digital or a print document. Print documents can be anything physically printed out, including flyers, posters, t-shirts, embroidery, stickers, and pins. Digital documents are anything that will exist on the web or on a digital device, electronic billboards, Facebook ads, and website graphics. Each one of these two different file setups will need their own color modes. There are two main color modes when creating documents, CMYK and RGB. Almost all print documents need to be in CMYK color mode. CMYK stands for cyan, magenta, yellow, and K stands for black. These are the four basic ink colors a printer needs to mix and create all the colors available for printing. When you send your document, let's say it's a poster, off to the online printer, they will take your document and make 4 metal plates. Each plate will print ink from only one of the 4 main colors. All 4 plates will be screen printed on your poster, and all those colors will mix to create a combination of millions of colors. This is why your print document should be in CMYK, but check your specs to find out the color requirements before sending a file in. Some printers use what's called digital printing, and they'll print your CMYK similar to an office printer you may find in your home or office. This way they don't have to create the 4 separate metal plates to create your document, and it's much cheaper this way. And it's mostly used for small print amounts. For example, if you're printing only 200 posters. Digital printing does not look as nice as the other method. I noticed that digital printing seems to make all of my colors a little darker than I expected, so if color is a huge part of your design, talk to your printer to see what method they use. There are some exceptions, but a good rule to follow is if it's going to be printed out, keep it in CMYK. RGB is your other color mode option. This is to be used for anything purely for the screen. If you're doing a web ad, for example, the file requirements will always be in RGB mode. Computer screens have 3 lights or nodes on each pixel of your screen. Each pixel will either have the red pixel, the green pixel, the blue pixel, and there's finally just a plain white pixel. And the combinations of those pixels together creates millions of colors you see on your screen. Anything that will end up being viewed on your screen will most likely need to be in RGB mode. CMYK, which we learned is reserved for printed items, cannot be viewed in the correct colors on a computer screen. So sending out a PDF that will be viewed on a web page in CMYK may render the colors funky. Now that we'll know whether our document will be a digital or a print document, and we know what color mode to use, the next big question is the size and what type of size unit I use when I create my document. There are 2 main units of measure you can use in design. The 2 that I use the most are pixels and inches, if you use the metric system, or centimeters if you use the International System of Units measurement. All digital documents, which we just learned will be in RGB mode, will also need to be in a pixel measurement. Print documents will need to be in inches or centimeter measurements. Bleed is only used for print documents. Bleed is an extra amount of space that is required around the print document files. This extra amount, usually the same around all the edges, is needed when a final document, for example our poster, is printed, and we want the ink to go all the way out to the edge. Anything outside of this red line or bleed area will just be trimmed off. Without this extra amount on the end, the poster will not be able to be printed with the ink going off the side of the page to have a flushed look. You can always look up how much bleed is required by looking at the print specs online or request them via an email from whatever company you're working with to print the items. When setting up your print document, you'll be asked to set the amount of bleed. A standard bleed measurement in the United States is 1/8 of an inch, but I need to put that in decimal terms, so 0.125 is 1/8 of an inch, so I put that on each side of my document. This can be a little tricky and it takes a little time to master. Some print specs will say the document requires 1/4 of an inch of bleed. I will need to convert that to decimals so I can be able to set that up in Illustrator. So I'll take my fraction, 1 divided by 4, and it comes out to 0.25. So now I'll be able to put that in Adobe Illustrator to set up my bleed. Once your document is finished, you'll want to bleed all the colors and photos all the way to the red line. This part will be trimmed off in the printing process, but we do need to have continuity in that trim part, just in case the printer does not trim perfectly. Of course, do not put any text or vital parts of photos in that bleed area, as that will not be shown and will be cut off on your final printed piece. Resolution matters. One of the biggest problems when working with graphics are graphics with too low of a resolution. Resolution is the amount of pixels, or dots, per square inch. The more pixels per square inch, the better the resolution. Digital images and documents can be 72 dpi, or dots per square inch. The computer and phone screens displays pixels at 72 dpi. That's why it seems like a random number, but that's just how much the screen displays. This is where it gets a little complicated. With Retina screens, the fancy name for Apple's high-resolution screens, are starting to become the standard resolution on mobile phones and high-end laptops. That means that the DPI required for images to look crisp and smooth on digital screens will need to be higher than 72 now. That's why I usually create digital documents with 300 DPI. It seems like overkill, but it's better to have a higher resolution that is too high than one that is not high enough. The only thing you have to be careful with is file size. The higher the DPI, the higher the file size. And with digital documents, sometimes there's file size restrictions, so you really don't need to do anything higher than 300 DPI. Let's practice opening up both a digital and a print project so we can feel comfortable setting up our files and reading our spec information.